Okay guys, so today we're going to take a look at multiplying and dividing polynomials. We already did adding and subtracting, so let's jump in and we'll start first with multiplying. So it says find the product. So in order to do multiplying with polynomials, we are going to distribute the monomial term to each term in the polynomial. We'll multiply the coefficients, and we're going to add the exponents. So let's take a look at the example that we have here. So starting off, we're going to do 4x times 3x squared. So if I multiply my coefficients, 4 times 3 gives me 12. And then for the x, I've got x to the power of 1 times x squared. We're adding those exponents, so it's x cubed. 4x times negative 8x, that's going to end up being negative 32. X to the power of 2, again, I'm adding those exponents. And finally, 4x times negative 4, that just gives me negative 16x. Like we talked about with adding and subtracting polynomials, we always want our final answer to be in standard form. And as a bit of a review, if I was going to name this, this has a degree of 3. So I would call that a cubic. And I have 3 different terms. 1, 2, 3. So something with 3 terms is called a trinomial. All right, so I want you guys to take a moment and we'll try this one. Since I'm not here today, I'm just going to go ahead and work this one out kind of in the same time. You guys can check to see if you get this correct. So I'm going to distribute. And again, you can do things like put a 1 in front of that w squared. We can add a 1 on the exponent of 4w to the power of 1, just to remember all of our rules. So as I go to distribute, 7w cubed times 1w squared gives me 7w to the 5th. 7w cubed times negative 4w, negative 28w to the 4th. Finally, 7w cubed times negative 1 is just negative 7w cubed. This is in standard form, so that's an appropriate answer. And again, reviewing, if I was going to name this, this has a degree of 5. We'd call that a 5th degree. And I have 1, 2, 3 terms again, so we know that's a trinomial. All right, let's switch gears and take a look at dividing polynomials by a monomial. So for dividing, we've got to remember our rule with dividing exponents. For example, if I had x to the 5th over x squared, we learned in our last unit that when you divide, we're really subtracting. We're bringing that 2 up and subtracting it from the top. So we get x to the power of 3. So we're going to do a lot of that here. With dividing, what we're going to do is we're going to divide each term in the numerator by the monomial in the denominator. We're going to divide the coefficients, and we're going to subtract the exponents. That's the rule from last chapter, subtracting exponents. Okay, so in taking a look here, you can kind of do it. You can either do it the way it shows, or if you'd like, you can write it out in long form, like 2x to the 4th divided by 2x squared, 4x cubed divided by 2x squared, 12x squared divided by 2x squared. So we can write it out individually like that, and let's just do that for our first one. So as we take a look, 2 divided by 2 is just 1, or you can just cross those out. X to the 4th divided by x squared, we're subtracting, so we just get plain old x squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Over here, remember, we're subtracting, so we get x. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. X squared over x squared, that'll technically get you x to the 0, which is 1, or just cancel it out. That's my final answer in standard form. Degree is 2, so we call that a quadratic. And I have 1, 2, 3 terms, trinomial. Okay, let's try this next one a little bit different. So instead of writing it out the long way like I showed you just a moment ago, this would be writing it out the long way, breaking it apart. You can also just do it individually, where I might just think to myself, okay, so to start off, I'm doing 6y squared divided by 3y. So in my mind, I'm doing 6 divided by 3, which is 2. Y to the power of 1 is at the bottom, y squared is at the top, so that's y squared minus 1, or just plain old y. I'll copy over my negative sign, so it's going to be minus, and then we repeat that division. 30 divided by 3 is 10. Y to the 1 divided by y to the 1, that'll cancel out, so this would be my final answer. So if you want to just do it like that, you can. If that seemed a little confusing, you always could write it out the long way. And you could say 6y squared divided by 3y minus 30y divided by 3y. And then you work it individually that way. Okay? Whatever works best for you. Okay, moving on. We're going to take a look at multiplying binomials. Now, binomials, remember, that is a polynomial that has 2 terms. So, it says find the product of x plus 4 times x minus 3. If you notice, both of these are binomials. Well, there's a little acronym called the FOIL method that we can use in algebra to help us multiply binomials. FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, and last. And you can kind of see all of the notes are over here for us. And this is something you can refer back to. Let's just try one and kind of see how that works. Actually, let's go ahead and do this one for us right now. So if I do the first 2 terms, that's going to be x times x. That'll give me x squared. And actually, let me put it down here. So the first 2 terms would be x times x, or x squared. The outer terms are going to be the 2 on the outside. So it would be x and negative 3, almost like they're bookends. So x times negative 3 is going to give me negative 3x. Then I've got the inner terms. Oh, sorry, I thought that was the highlighter. Boom. So my inner terms are going to be the 2 on the inside. Positive 4 times x. So 4 times x is 4x, and that was positive. And then finally, we have the last. So the last 2 terms, meaning the last one in the first binomial, the last one in the second binomial. So that would be 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. Now, after you do first, outer, inner, last, if you notice our step 5 here, it says simplify by combining like terms. So the like terms are almost always those middle 2 guys. So I'm going to get x squared plus x minus 12. Okay, let's try another one. So 2 binomials. That's when I can use this new FOIL method. And this is something, guys, you'll use in geometry and in algebra 2. So to start off, we're going to do the first 2 terms. That's going to be 3x times x. So 3x times x is 3x squared. Next is the outer, the 2 on the outside. 3x times negative 4, that's negative 12x. Inner, the 2 on the inside, positive 2 times x. That's positive 2x if I multiply that. And then finally, we have the last. The last 2, that would be my 2 times my negative 4. That's going to give me negative 8. As my last step, I'm going to combine like terms. So those middle 2 are the ones I'm putting together. 3x squared minus 10x minus 8. That's going to be my final answer. Now, the FOIL method is something that you'll hear a lot, but you could also multiply two binomials with just the regular distributive property. So if we went back to that first problem, x plus 4 times x minus 3, what they're suggesting to do is to split the first binomial and multiply each monomial term by the second binomial. So for this x plus 4, they're taking the x and they're multiplying it by everything in the second binomial, x minus 3. Then they're taking the 4, and they're also multiplying it by that x minus 3. So x times x is x squared, x times negative 3 is negative 3x, 4 times x is 4x, 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Combine like terms. So you end up getting x squared plus 1x or x minus 12. And if you notice, guys, that's exactly what we had up above. We had that answer here, and now we're getting it again. So FOIL is something that I will go with in class and going forward, but you could also use this distributive property. So in taking a look at this guy, we can go ahead and do the distributive just to try something different. So using the distributive, I'm going to take this 2x and I'm going to multiply by everything over here. So 2x times x is 2x squared. Then do 2x times negative 7, negative 14x. So at this moment, we've distributed that 2x to everything in the second binomial. It's done. Now we do the same thing for negative 5. Watch that sign. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 7 is a positive 35. Combine like terms, so typically it's those middle two terms. I'll bring my 2x squared down. Negative 14, negative 5 is negative 19, and then plus 35. Okay? All right, now we don't always just multiply binomials. Sometimes we'll be multiplying binomials by a trinomial or by something else. So in taking a look at the other kinds, this is where you can't use FOIL. We'd have to use the distributive property because we can't. FOIL is only for two binomials. So let's take a look at this first one. I'm going to take x and I'm going to distribute it. Now this is x to the 1, so x to the 1 times x squared is x cubed. X times negative 3x is negative 3x squared. Remember, I'm just adding those exponents. X times 4 is 4x. Now I've distributed x to everything in that second polynomial, so x is done. Now I pick up the 2. It's a positive 2. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times negative 3x is negative 6x. And 2 times 4 is positive 8. Let's combine like terms. So x cubed, there's no other x cubed term, so we'll bring that down. I've got negative 3x squared. That can go with positive 2x squared. So we get negative 1x squared or just negative x squared. We have 4x that can combine with negative 6x, so we get negative 2x. And finally, we'll just bring down that plus 8. There's nothing for that to combine with. Again, guys, remember leaving your answers in that proper standard form. Okay. Taking a look at one more. It's not two binomials. We have here a binomial and a trinomial. So you cannot use the FOIL. Here, you've got to use the distributive property. So starting off with that 2x to the power of 1 times 3x squared. That's 6x cubed. 2x times x, that's 2x squared. 2x times negative 1, that's negative 2x. So 2x has been done. We distributed that to everything. Now we pick up negative 6. Watch that sign. Negative 6 times 3x squared is negative 18x squared. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6. Last step, since we've now distributed everything, is to combine like terms. So 6x cubed, there's nothing for that to join with, just bring it down. 2x squared and negative 18x squared gives us negative 16x squared. Negative 2x and negative 6x is negative 8x. And then finally, I'm just going to bring down that plus 6. All right, guys, last one is an application problem. So it says, in hockey, a goalie behind the goal line can play a puck only in the trapezoidal region. So let's take a look at that. We're talking about a trapezoid. So they're kind of highlighting that out for me right here. It says, write a polynomial that represents the area of the trapezoidal region. Hint, area formula for a trapezoid. So that's so nice. They're giving me the formula. So what this means is 1/2 of B1 stands for base 1, B2 stands for base 2, and then the H stands for the height. So in a typical trapezoid, if I just draw one out over here, oops, that could be like base 1, that could be base 2, and then whatever makes that perpendicular angle connecting the bases, that's my height. Okay, so let's take a look at the dimensions that they give me. I know I'm going to have that 1/2. That's consistent. But now I need the bases. So I'm going to call this x at the top my base 1. And I'm going to call this x plus 6 at the bottom my base 2. So it's going to be x plus 6. That's the base 1 and base 2. We're adding those together. But now we're going to have to multiply by the height. So the height in my trapezoid here is going to be that x minus 11. All right. So let's simplify this. And I'm going to start with my typical order of operations because I can simplify what's in this first set of parentheses. So I'm going to keep my 1/2, but I'll go ahead and combine 1x and 1x gets me 2x plus 6 times x minus 11. Now, it's up to you. You could either choose to multiply the two binomials first or distribute this 1/2 to the first binomial. I'm going to do that because I can see in my first binomial I have two even numbers, so 2 will divide in evenly. So I'm going to say 1/2 of 2x is x, 1/2 of 6 is 3. So that just got rid of that 1/2. Now, since I have two binomials, I'm going to use my FOIL method, first, outer, inner, last. So if I do my first two terms, that's going to be x times x, that's going to be x squared. Let's do the outer, x times negative 11, that's negative 11x. The inner, 3 times x, that's going to be 3x. And then finally the outer, the last two, 3 times negative 11, that's negative 33, and we'll combine like terms. So we'll get x squared minus 8x minus 33. That'll represent the area of the trapezoid. So now taking a look at part B, it says find the area of the trapezoidal region when the shorter base is 22 feet. Well, let's take a look. The shorter base is obviously this one right here, and that's represented by x. So if this shorter base is 22, what that tells me is x equals 22. So in order to find the area, when it's the shorter base is 22, all I'm going to do is take that solution I had in part A, and we are going to substitute 22 in where we see x. So we'll have area equals 22 squared minus 8 times 22 minus 33. So as you go through to simplify this, you're going to see that 22 squared gets you 484. 8 times 22 is going to be 176, so we're minus 176, and then minus 133. Let your calculator do the work, you plug this in, and you get the area to come out to be 275 feet. And don't forget squared. When we're dealing with area, it's feet squared.